Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 185 Quick, Healthy Meals When You're Too Busy for Cooking. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Real World Nutrition. I'm Shelley, registered dietitian nutritionist, founder of Real World Nutrition, where I like to keep it real about navigating, living, and eating healthier in the real world because life does not slow down just because we're trying to eat well. We want to eat healthier, so all of a sudden our schedule has to clear. That's not how things work. So today I want to talk about that that one thing, or that thing that often comes up with my clients, with my friends, even in my own life. What do we eat when we're just too busy to cook? So I have talked about this many times over the years for much of my career, how we can have some quick, easy ways to have healthier meals or just healthier food options. So this past week, I did write a blog post that complements this episode that I have a link in the show notes. And it's talking about the same ideas with a little bit more detail for some meal planning. So today, with this podcast episode, I want to dive into this in a different way than what I have written in the blog and talk directly to those of you who may not want to, or maybe don't have time to sit down and read that blog, but still want some of those useful ideas to use right now. So first up, the problem with being busy and hungry. So I want to start here. We're all busy. It's one of the most common things I hear. I've said it. You've probably said it. Maybe you haven't. And it almost feels like it's a competition. Who's busier? Or at least it used to. I think a lot of us just acknowledge that's our life these days. So part of being busy is people telling me I don't have time to cook. Eating healthy takes more time. I get home late. I forget to eat. I'm too tired to make anything. I'm just not hungry until suddenly it's too late. So a lot of times I hear people aren't hungry throughout the day, but then when it comes time to eat, when they actually are hungry, they just want something super quick. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. Because here's the thing. When we're constantly going and putting everyone and everything else first, eating well becomes another task that we put off. And that's not just eating well. That's the exercise, that's the sleeping, that's the self-care. But this episode, of course, is focusing on the eating part of things. But eating well can become another task that we just push to the back burner. And then what happens? We skip meals. We grab random snacks. Eat cereal for dinner. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Or we get the drive-through, or even more common these days, have it delivered straight to the house. And nothing wrong, like I said, there's nothing wrong with cereal for dinner. There's nothing wrong with takeout once in a while. But if it's your default, it might be time to revisit, reset, reconsider what you're doing. So I want to actually define what a meal looks like. So a lot of times people have this idea in their head of what does that meal look like? Now, it doesn't have to be a sit-down, photo-worthy event. It doesn't need to include the sides or take 45 minutes to make. It can be as simple as some rotisserie chicken, microwaved frozen vegetables, and a piece of toast. It can be cottage cheese with cherry tomatoes and pita. It could be scrambled eggs, sauteed spinach, and hash browns. The other night, I took 90-second pre-cooked brown rice that takes 90 seconds to reheat, a bag of frozen diced sweet potatoes, a can of black beans. And while that microwave was going, I was cutting some cherry tomatoes in half. Tossed all that together, threw in some shredded cheese. From start to finish, it was less than 15 minutes. And when I say start, that was coming up with the idea of what I was going to make. So that rice, the beans, the sweet potatoes, the cherry tomatoes, and there were spices I threw in there so it wasn't bland, and the cheese. So with that, I was making sure that I had all those food groups. The grain, the protein, the fruit, the vegetable, and the dairy. So what I encourage people to do is think of that. Think of the 5 food groups. But really also think of that protein. Maybe think of that carb, as people think of it, the grain, the whole grain. And ideally a fruit or vegetable. If you've got that, you've got a balanced meal. And it doesn't even always have to go together. And a lot of times people would think sweet potato with black beans. Yeah, that works. So when you take the pressure off of what does cooking perfectly mean, because perfectly doesn't exist, but a lot of people feel that eating healthy has to be this big old process. But when you open the door to actually eating something nourishing, even when you're tired, rushed, or unmotivated, you've got something. You can. So I'm going to provide some real world strategies here. So here are some of my real world strategies for quick meals. Number 1, embrace the shortcuts. I know that sometimes these shortcuts can feel more expensive. But if you think about it, if you're eating it, not ordering takeout, is it really more expensive? So look for pre-chopped vegetables. If you're not going to cut up vegetables, get them pre-cut. Microwavable brown rice or quinoa. As I mentioned, I had my 90-second brown rice. This is something I buy at Costco. It's a bowl of brown rice. Literally takes 90 seconds to heat up. They also have quinoa bowls. 90 seconds. The other night, I had the rice cooker out and said, forget it, I'm going to microwave one of the bowls. Buy pre-cooked proteins like grilled chicken strips, hard-boiled eggs, the rotisserie chicken. And this is something that apparently a lot of people don't know. Yes, Costco is famous for their rotisserie chicken, but the ones they don't sell in the timeline that they need to, because the hot rotisserie chickens are there's a timestamp on them, and they're pulled if they're not sold. And they actually take those chickens apart, and you can buy a package of vacuum sealed rotisserie chicken over in the refrigerator area. And that's what I buy. So those rotisserie chicken, it's already shredded or taken apart for me. It's there. And then one of my long-term favorites is the frozen steamable veggies. Today, the veggies come in a bag that are microwavable. You don't need to do anything except for look at the back of the bag and see how many minutes you need to put it in there. And if you're concerned about microwaving plastic, well, then I don't know what to say, because I don't have that concern. There's so many other concerns in our environment that avoiding vegetables just because they come in a microwavable bag is seriously, it's not even my top 100 health concerns. But these things are lifesavers when you need something ready in 5-10 minutes. So those were some of those things I used the example of. The pre-cooked brown rice, the steamed vegetables, and another night this week, I used some of that rotisserie chicken with another can of beans. Those were white beans, and some tomatoes again, and some olive oil, and some blue cheese. No cook. Here's the second tip, real world strategy. Build a meal around what you have. So don't overthink it. So when I've made a couple of meals this week, I looked at what was in the pantry, in the fridge, in the freezer. Open the fridge, grab a protein, grab a carb or a grain or a starch, grab a veggie. So if you've done some of those grocery shortcuts, the veggies and the microwavable grain, and had some proteins on hand, and the protein, those were my beans a couple times this week, we've got a meal. So here's some examples. Tuna pouch, a pouch of tuna, can of tuna, whatever. Crackers, whole grain crackers, and some baby carrots. If you don't have baby carrots, find another vegetable. Hummus, whole wheat tortilla, spinach, feta. You can take that hummus, spread it across the tortilla, throw on some spinach feta, roll it up, there you go. Leftover chicken, whether it's the rotisserie or some other leftover chicken or other protein, the microwavable rice or quinoa, frozen broccoli, another bowl. Number 3, stock what I call back pocket pantry items. So those things that are there, they're always there. In my house, they're always there. So it's a matter of they're usually there for backup. Shelf-stable proteins like the canned beans and tuna. If you look at my pantry, 365 days a year, there will be at least one can of beans and at least a couple cans of tuna. Nut butters. Peanut butter is my go-to. If that's not what you're into, whatever nut butter works for you. Whole grain pasta. Any type of pasta. Tomato sauce. From diced tomatoes, tomato sauce, and even a marinara sauce. Again, something that's always in my pantry. Something that's always in my fridge, frozen vegetables. Sorry, those aren't in the fridge. Those are in the freezer. Trust me. And eggs. Eggs are always in the fridge. Now, I don't go through eggs a lot. I've probably had the same dozen in there for a couple months. They're still perfectly safe, even if they're old. But I tend to have them on hand because sometimes at night, instead of making something, crack a few eggs, throw in some vegetables, and we have a vegetable omelet. So when the fridge is empty or empty-ish and you're tempted to order out, having some of those shelf-stable proteins or the frozen veggies or the eggs can really help a meal come together quickly. And here's the 4th thing here is I have this listed as what to avoid, but really let's say more of what to minimize, okay? Because when I'm talking real world nutrition, I'm never talking about what not to do, not because these foods are bad, but mostly these aren't the foods that help us feel our best. Let's be real. So when we're stressed, when we're tired, this is human nature. Don't worry about this if this is you, because all of us do it. Some of us just strategize a little bit differently. When we're tired, we're stressed, we often default to those highly processed, sugary, or salty convenience foods. So think, chips and dip, that's a meal. You don't have to admit to anybody, but most people have done it. Half a box of cookies, a candy or soda or something to hold us over. I have so many people tell me they buy the Snickers bar because they had a great marketing campaign that helps you get from being hangry. When you're hungry, you're not yourself. Nothing wrong with having that. Yet at the same time, if it's our go-to, if we think about it, it might help us feel satisfying for a second, for a few minutes, maybe half an hour. But let's face it, it rarely keeps us full. It rarely keeps us focused for very long, and it's very easy to overconsume. So again, think of this. It's not off limits. It's okay to have chips and dip. It's okay to have cookies. But don't think of it as being a meal or something you go to. So if this is something you go to, you need to consider other strategies. So with all that, I always want to emphasize There is nothing that should stop you from making healthier choices on a day-to-day basis. Eating well doesn't have to be all or nothing. Eating well doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be time consuming. Some days, if your dinner is eggs and toast, that's fine. Other days, if you decide to go all out and find a new recipe and go with this beautifully layered grain bowl or whatever you find on Pinterest or wherever people go to for recipes these days, that's great. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Give yourself permission to do what works for your life and your current season. What works for you? If you're single and you have solo meals, or have a full family, or anything in between. Go with what works for you. You're not failing because you don't cook. You're not failing because you don't cook elaborate meals. You're not failing, period. I'm just trying to help people have ideas on how to have those quick go-to things. So if you want to see more tips, more information about what I was talking about today, and like I said, find the companion blog to this. I have the link in the show notes. So that's the quick meals, ideas for quick meals when we're busy and on the go. So there's more examples there, grocery lists, and ideas to build that go-to meal plan. So having those things in your kitchen on hand for those last minute meals. All right. I'd love to hear from you and have any of these ideas found helpful, reassuring. I would love to hear that. So always, every time I drop an episode, I thank for all of you who tune in, listen, and I would love for you to share this with somebody who might find it helpful. You can always follow me on my various social media sites. I'm on everything from Facebook to Blue Sky to Threads to Instagram. I've kind of left my YouTube channel alone for a while, but I'm thinking of posting back there again. This podcast streams up to YouTube, just the audio. But wherever you are, I'm probably there too. So, with that, until next time, be well, have a great week, and bye for now.